Hi everyone, Lady Amalthea here with something a bit different. I've always been a big reader. As a child, I essentially bullied my parents into teaching me to read and write before I started school, as I wasn't satisfied with the rate that they read to me, and I also wanted to read my dad's Phantom comics. I then taught everyone in my preschool how to write their own names. I guess I've always believed in the power of sharing knowledge. My sister is 6 years younger than me, so I had plenty of opportunities to read by myself as a kid. My mum complained how much we had to go to the library to keep up with my reading habit. There's worse things to be passionate about, geez. Even now, at 38, I spend a lot of time reading. I wanted to discuss some of my favourite books of 2023 with you. Initially, I set a goal of reading 30 books in 2023. It did seem ambitious at first, as I had slowed down a bit with my reading and wasn't finding it as easy as I once did. This is pretty common, particularly amongst those of us who were voracious readers as kids until life got in the way. I read the Odyssey at around age 9 or 10, much to the astonishment of the school library. I didn't understand the fuss. Why have it in the school library if you didn't want me reading it? I won a few prizes for the amount of books I read and was sometimes rewarded with book vouchers. How awesome. I seldom was found without a book until adulthood came along. But now I have found my feet again. Now, of course, the internet is a big distraction when it comes to reading. I've lost my place. Many of my friends find that they also spend time scrolling instead of reading. There's countless articles about our shortened attention spans and that everyone is reading books less. It's all a bit depressing, really. Now, I use GoodReads to keep track of my books. I first started using it to catalogue my book collection, and now I track my yearly reading. I have a decent selection of books, most of which have spent the better part of 5 years in boxes due to a cross-country move. We're working on getting more bookcases so I can display all my treasures once more. During this time, I've really utilised my Kindle and also my local library. I'm lucky to live in an area with an amazing library system. It was one of the first things I did when I moved to Perth, check out my local library, and I was not disappointed. It has an incredibly varied collection and is staffed by very passionate people. I do a lot of activities at the library, so I'm usually there once a week or so. Now, I'm not sure if you know this, but it's illegal to leave the library without borrowing a book, so obviously I stick to the law. I currently have 21 books on loan. The maximum for a single user is 30. I'll try and link my GoodReads below if I remember. Once I passed my initial goal of 30 books in May, I decided to up my goal to 50. And as the year went on, I realized there was a good chance I'd make it to 100, and I'm very pleased that I surpassed that goal. Largely, I listen to audiobooks while driving, although sometimes I do listen to them when I'm playing my daily video games like Animal Crossing and Cozy Grove, and just pause when I get to a bit of the game that I need to concentrate a bit more. Or sometimes when I'm just sitting on the couch with the dogs. I do use them to help me sleep. Some, of course, are more suited to that than others. For example, I restarted the Chronicles of Narnia in 2023 and was using them to help me with sleep and relaxation. I've got The Last Battle to go. Not so good for sleep and relaxation, that one, I must say. I often have The Hobbit on the go, as that's my favorite book. And when I'm feeling unwell, I like to pop that on. I'm currently listening to the Andy Serkis recording. It's incredible. I'm so excited to then go on to listen the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy, which he has recorded, including the Silmarillion. I read at all kinds of time of day. Because of my health, I'm not currently working, so I have a lot of flexibility with my time. A tip that I found quite useful for getting my brain back into reading is from my friend Katie Bellew, was to read first thing in the morning before going on your phone. Now, I find that I prefer to journal first thing in the morning and then get into the reading still. Both things make my brain very happy. In fact, this video started as a journal entry. I've been thinking about making this video for a while, but I wanted to do it after I hit my goal, so I had my full selection of books to choose from. I'm a pretty generous star giver when it comes to rating books. I'm more likely to give a 4 or 5 star because I enjoyed it, not just because it completely blew me away, but because I got something out of it. I feel mean to give less than a 4-star rating sometimes. I know ratings and reviews are important for authors, so I always try to do so. I don't tend to pick things that I don't think will appeal to me, so I'm not reading Lee Child or whatever thriller, murder, mystery, crime, procedural is currently a bestseller. Not my thing. I generally enjoy speculative fiction, especially fantasy, and I also read a lot of historical fiction with strong female protagonists. In fact, I'm currently working on my own historical fiction novel at the moment. I completed my first draft in November last year during National Novel Writing Month. I also do read a lot of young adult, particularly queer stories. I often read a book and wish I'd been able to read it myself as a teenager, especially when there's non-binary representation. How marvelous is it that these titles now exist and that my local library is full of them. During our Pride Month here in Perth, which is November, they had a gorgeous rotating display of queer novels for all ages, many of which I picked up to read myself or had already read. I also got some really cool bookmarks from my library. My favorite had frogs on it as well, because I'm non-binary, so I love frogs, so of course. I've participated in the GoodReads reading challenge every year since 2015, and 2017 was the only year I didn't meet my goal according to the statistics. Some years I surpassed my goal significantly, and others just made it. In 2022, my goal was 31 and I made it to 51. I was pretty pleased with that. I thought that 30 was a good number for 2023. I will admit I did DNF, did not finish, 3 books in 2023, but seeing as I also read a 5-book omnibus, I still count my total as 101. I never used to DNF, but honestly, I don't think there's any shame in realizing a book is not for you. One was a self-help book my mom had wanted me to read. Just wasn't doing it for me, and I tried it a few times. The other 2 were romance novels that just weren't grabbing me. I've realized that when it comes to romance novels, I need a hook that grabs me. So just a generic love story doesn't do it for me. Some of the romance novels I've really enjoyed this year have been about South Asian characters, a part of the world I've always been interested in, and have had the absolute pleasure of visiting India in 2014 for a wedding. What an experience. Now let's get into those stats. In 2023, I read 101 books, as I mentioned. Now 59 of those were from the library, 24 were audio books, some of which again were from the library, mostly on apps like BorrowBox or Libby, but some were CDs. And then there were 19 Kindle books. 10 of these titles were for 2 book clubs that I'm in, one being the Blossom Book Club run through Katie Bellew's Patreon, so there is a cost to that, and the other being Belinda Alexandra and Natasha Lester's online book club through Facebook, and I'll link to both of these options below. 4 of those books were the first 4 Discworld books that I listened to with my fiance, as I've gotten him into Discworld, and we listen to the books when we go places together in the car. We finished Mort in December and then went straight into Sorcery. I love those original Nigel Planer recordings, although I've heard good things about the new recordings. Another series I read included the Devry Cycle by Catherine Kerr. I read books 1 to 7 in 2022 and then 8 to 12 in 2023, and then got distracted by all the library books. Oops. I'll get back to them. I've only got a few to go. In addition to that, I read 13 other series, either just the first book in a few cases or the complete thing. 29,104 pages read, 101 books, shortest at 73 pages, which was the graphic novel The Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill. I need to read the rest of them. And the longest was 628 pages. Club Vampire by Marina Moreau, an omnibus of sexy vampire stories. I am now willing to admit that I read erotica. Past me would not have admitted this, especially in a YouTube video. The average book length was 228 pages, 288 pages, sorry. The most shelved book I read was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, being the second of the Chronicles of Narnia series by C.S. Lewis. Over 3 million people have shelved this. And the least shelved was Art is Everywhere by Joe Hadow, which, with only 2 other readers, definitely a shame because it's a fun title I think a lot of primary school kids would get a lot out of. My average rating was 4.3. I told you I was generous. Ridiculously, the highest rated of those was the Bible. One of the few books I did not give a star rating to, because how do you rate the Bible when you first started reading it, when you went back to church as a confused adult, realized Christianity wasn't for you, walked down the path of witchcraft, but decided to finish it anyway out of curiosity? Riddle me that. It was not an enjoyable read, that's for sure. But I'm glad I achieved it, even if it did take me a decade of intermittent reading. Seeing as I rated 56 books 5 stars, I won't get into all of them or we'll be here all day. So I'm just going to talk about my absolute favorites, which is still a challenge because clearly I love books. Now, obviously, Chronicles of Narnia are a favorite if I'm listening to the audiobooks and have read the physical books a million times and seen the TV show and all the movies. So I won't go into that other than to say it is weird going back to Narnia as an adult and a witch compared to reading them as a child and a Christian. I still would love to have afternoon tea with C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien if I ever got the opportunity to do so. Oh, that'd be fun. I can read them now with more of a critical eye, but I do still love that world. I finished The Silver Chair at 10 p.m. on New Year's Eve in bed and properly fell asleep afterwards. And yeah, like I mentioned, I've still got the last battle to go. I also clearly love the Dev Recycle if I'm up to book 13 of 16. I did quickly want to mention a series at the recommendation that I read at the recommendation of my friend Ellie, which is The Scholomance by Naomi Novak. I understand the hype. 2 books that were the first in a series that isn't finished yet were The Dawn Hounds by Sasha Stronach and Song Like Silver, Flame Like Night by Amelie Wenzhou. Bring on the sequels. These are 2 own voices mythology-inspired stories, the first being Maori and the second Chinese. I'm mindful of reading diversely as it's so easy, especially as a fantasy lover, to stick to the cis white men authors. In 2024, I'm using a reading spreadsheet that will help me track more of this information, including diversity. I'll also try and remember to link that below. It's a new challenge for me to try it. So here are my top 20 fiction books of 2023 and top 5 memoir / non-fiction titles. Okay, here we go. Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaughey. Now, I got the audiobook of this simply because the cover looked interesting, and it's about reintroducing wolves to Scotland. Oh my God. This book is intense, don't get me wrong. There are deaths, and there is some graphic depictions of domestic violence. So I would caution against that if that's a topic that is triggering for you. But otherwise, oh my goodness, I was captivated. I listened to the audiobook like I mentioned, and I didn't want to get out of the car. I love this book and I do recommend it, but like I said, just be mindful of domestic violence if that's a trigger for you. Another 5-star, and this is in no particular order. This is just I made a spreadsheet and I sorted them, and it completely took them out of order, but it's just, they're all 5 stars, these. Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. Oh, perfect. This book is perfect. I love a time travel story, and this is timey-wimey, and this is just beautiful. Oh my goodness. I also recommend, is it Station 11? It's her first book. Loved it. By Catherine Applegate. I just want to shout out quickly to Otter, because that was just such a beautiful little story about sea otters, particularly at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And I think books like this are great for raising awareness for the importance of caring for animals. Another little series, I suppose it's a series, would be Wandy and Kimmy by Farvel Parrott, who is an Australian author, and they're about dingoes. So get your kids onto those. They're just great. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, which is book 1 in the Emily Wilde series by Heather Fawcett. Oh my goodness, I cannot wait for book 2. I know Katie didn't love this one, but I absolutely did. I could not put it down. I just devoured it. I loved the characters. I loved the humans and the fairies, and oh, it was enchanting. I love books with fairies in them. I'm not going to pretend I don't. So yeah, it was, no, I just loved it. Salman Shah's The Matchmaker. Now, this is a South Asian romance story set in Sydney, where I'm from. Funnily enough, in a part of Sydney that I know very well, Parramatta. And it just felt like hanging out with friends and going on dates with them and having their experiences together. And it was just beautiful. I really loved this, and I recommended it to my mum, and she also really enjoyed it. The Cloisters by Caddy Hayes. This was creepy and atmospheric. It's set in a museum and there's a mystery. And I gotta say, if you love the tarot, highly recommend this. It's about the first ever tarot deck, and it's just, it's so good. Anne Helen Lastidius's Stolen is again one of my just, oh my God, favorite books. I believe the filming is done. It's being adapted for Netflix. I'm not sure if it's a TV series or a movie. I can't recall off the top of my head. And I swear they better do this justice, because this book has absolutely stayed with me and haunted me. And I cannot recommend it enough. It is about Sami people and the desecration of their culture and the slaughtering of their reindeer. And it's just, oh my goodness. Once There Were Wolves, Sea of Tranquility, and Stolen are probably, and The Lessons in Chemistry are probably the 4 books that have stayed with me the most from this year. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to see what they've done with Stolen. Next up is Catherine J. Chen's Joan, as in Joan of Arc. It's a feminist retelling of the start of Joan of Arc's life. It more focuses on the start of her life up until her capture by the English. Oh my goodness, absolutely incredible. I really, really loved it. Like I said, I love strong historical fiction, and the fact that this is based on a real person was just even more amazing. I'm sure that the author took liberties, but I don't know enough of the details of Joan of Arc's life to say, oh yeah, it's made up here, here, and here, but it was just amazing. A Scatter of Light by Belinda is the perfect companion novel to The Last Night of the Telegraph Club, which we read in our Blossom Book Club. It must have been in 2022. It is just a delight of a book. It is the kind of queer romance novel, again, I wish I'd had as a teenager, that it's complicated and messy because one of the plots involves cheating, but it is just, it's a beautiful coming of age story. And I did just vote for it on our poll for the book for February for our book club. So I highly recommend it. Now, a book that left me in tears and just in laughter was Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus, which has been adapted for TV, I believe it's on Apple TV. I'm a bit worried that the show won't be as hilarious and as moving as the book. I was reading it while I was waiting in a friend's living room, and my friend's a massage therapist, so we go to her house for massage, and I was reading it while I was waiting for my turn, and her and my fiance are listening to me just cackling madly, and they're like, what is going on out there? Oh my God. It had me in stitches. I've never read anything like it. Again, I get the hype. A very short book. I read it in less than 20 minutes, by Philip Pullman, is The Collectors, which is one of those little, I guess, vignettes set in the world of the His Dark Materials trilogy. Oh, it was divine, and I just love that world so much, and I'm so excited now that the Book of Dust series is finished. That's going to be one of my next book purchases, and I will be diving right into these. Oh dear, I didn't look up the pronunciation, so I do apologize if I get this wrong. The Henna Wars by J. Girdar. Adiba, was just such a lovely story. It's set in Ireland, and it's again a South Asian story. The main character is Bangladeshi and her family, and it's a beautiful queer love story. And it's just, oh, I loved it. It was so sweet. After reading a particularly harrowing book, Try Time at Cinnamon Gardens, oh my goodness, I needed something gentle, and I listened to The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, the Jenna Louise Coleman recording specifically, because I needed some gentleness, and it was such a good recording. I know that it's a problematic book with the ableism and everything, but it's a childhood favorite, and that movie from the 90s I just adore. And it was just, yeah, it was exactly what I needed at the time. Elise John's Orphea and Eurydice. I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure. Oh my goodness. This is a queer, gender-flipped story, retelling of the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. And it is so gay. It is so gay. It is so good. Oh my goodness. Loved it. Highly recommend. Now, a book called The One Who Loves You the Most by Medina. This was a book I wish I'd had at that age. The protagonist realizes during the course of the book that they are non-binary, also asexual, but that doesn't apply to me. But I'm non-binary, and I wish I had that book as a 12-year-old, because the discomfort you feel when you don't know yourself, and the relief you feel when you discover who you are, it's palpable. So it just, oh, I loved that book. It was just beautiful. It hasn't, I do apologize because I'm going to have to quickly Google something. It hasn't listed the other author, so I'm just going to quickly go to it. This is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El Motta and Max Gladstone. There we go. That was the other one. My spreadsheet didn't get all the information. We read this for the Blossom Book Club, and I read it in 3 hours, sitting on the couch. As I mentioned before, love a timey-wimey story, and this is a timey-wimey story told in letters, and that is one of my favorite things. A timey-wimey romance told in letters. Oh, I cannot get enough. Just loved it. Just loved it. It was like, I love reading when people fall in love over letters, and particularly as I'm someone who has online relationships and has fallen in love with the written word, over the written word, with someone, with more than just the written word. But yeah, it's something I'm very passionate about. Now, T. Kingfisher's Nettle and Bone was on the scarier side of what I'm comfortable with, but oh my goodness, I want to go and read more of her books now. I had previously read A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, which I just loved in 2022 possibly, and now I want to go and read more T. Kingfisher books, because Nettle and Bone was just, oh my goodness, that was a library book that I want to own a copy of for myself. And number 20 also, I don't know, I've kind of lost count, Again, on the spookier side of what I'm more comfortable with, because I am an absolute wimp, by Hester Fox, was The Last Heir to the Blackwood Library. What a story. I picked it up on the cover um, and I just loved it. It was captivating, even if it was a bit kind of scary at times, and I was like, oh, this maybe is a bit too scary, but I loved it. It was beautifully written. I tend to find books with strong characters and beautiful writing are the things that I'm drawn to. And that's certainly every single one of these books I have mentioned has had that, has had strong characters and strong writing. So now here's my top 5 memoir. Different Not Less, A Neurodivergence Guide to Embracing Your True Self and Finding Happily Ever After by Chloe Hayden. I am so excited that Chloe's voice is being heard and that we are now amplifying autistic voices. I was diagnosed with autism in 2022, and that's been a life-changing experience. So I have been reading books by autistic authors because own voices is so important. And I absolutely love this. I listened to the audio book. It was for our book club, and I loved it. Yes, it is aimed at a younger audience than myself, being an elder millennial, and Chloe is much younger than myself, but I really I loved it because it echoed so many of my own experiences. And again, this is a book I'm glad exists for younger people because hopefully they can have a better experience with their lives. Remainders of the Day, More Diaries from the Bookshop, Wigtown, The Diary of a Bookseller, number 3 by Sean Blythel. Oh, I need to read all of the books in this series. So Sean is a bookseller in a shop called The Bookshop in Scotland, and he records his it's like a daily journal of his adventures in the bookshop, and it is incredible. And I'd love to go visit there one day. And it brought me a lot of comfort during an emergency department visit. So it will hold a place in my heart for a very long time. Another book by Julia Hollander was Why We Sing. And I really think all singers need to read this. It is a beautiful book with a lot of soul. And it talks about the importance of singing and the importance of music, and that you don't need to be a good singer to sing. And it was just wonderful. I guess these aren't all strictly memoir, but this one also definitely is The Hate Race by Maxine Beneba Clark. And I think all Australians should read this. I think it should absolutely be mandatory reading. Apparently it was on the New South Wales school syllabus, English syllabus for a time. I'm not sure if it still is. Again, another title we read with our book club. I was shocked but not shocked at Maxine's experience growing up in Kellyville in Sydney, a suburb I have personally lived in. She is a black woman. She is largely known for being a poet, but oh my goodness, it was absolutely harrowing seeing what her and her family went through simply for being black. And I think we need to read these stories and share these stories because Australia has a racism problem. I mean, the recent referendum absolutely showed that Australia has a racism problem. Australia was built on racism. Let's not pretend otherwise. And The Hate Race was just, oh my goodness, chilling. Beautifully written. Maxine is an incredible writer. And the last one I want to mention is by Jane Meredith, Journey to the Dark Goddess, How to Return to Your Soul. I did this class with Jane Meredith, but she also has a book. And so, of course, I had to read the book. And Jane Meredith is absolutely one of my favourite teachers and just such an amazing person. So I guess this isn't so much a memoir. Well, it is part memoir, but part instruction on how to journey with the Dark Goddess. And it's just, beautiful. It was really nice. So for 2024, that's all the books. For 2024, my official goal is 50, but I am confident I can make it to 100 again, even if I've had a slow start to the year, as my boyfriend was visiting from Melbourne and I spent my usual reading time enjoying the most of our time together. No complaints though, living 3,000 kilometres apart is a challenge, and I would happily sacrifice reading time to spend time with him. I might make more book content in the future, depending on how I go. I really love hearing what other people think about books, even if we're not on the same page. Thank you so much for sharing this with me today, and until next time, many blessings.